I saw an interview by a professor who'd written a book based on the best attempts he'd seen at cheating. The best one, according to him, was a guy that showed up with 2 blue books for an essay test. He spent the entire time writing a letter to his sister in one of the blue books. Then as soon as the test was over, he went to the library. There was a young student who was a gifted engineer as well as a creator of music. He decided not to become an engineer as he didn't think he could stand the corporate culture, even though he really loved science. And he figured he'd missed the boat to becoming a DJ as electronic music creation programs had become so ubiquitous. It was already a very crowded marketplace. So while he was being an old school DJ for his college radio station, he started playing around with how to mix in subacoustic subliminal programming messages in the songs he would play on the radio. He became so fascinated by this, he decided to just become a regular DJ. So by the time he graduated, he'd made enough contacts to get a regular job as a regular radio DJ while pursuing his secret hobby. One of the professors was famous for 2 things: giving out completely easy A's and B's and rambling on absolutely incoherently during his lectures. Some of the students showed up knowing full well they didn't really need to, just to hear this weird guy go off on all kinds of tangents that didn't have anything to do with one another. Even stranger was the final exam, a bunch of questions that had zero relation to the subject, but required at least 50 words and at least 5 full sentences handwritten. This guy had a small organic shop, and due to his excellent marketing techniques, he was very successful. So successful that he expanded into the supermarket business. But he operated his supermarkets opposite to how most supermarkets are operated. He absolutely refused to comply with the wishes of the processed food industrial complex. If you wanted to find processed food, it was way in the back. Up front were all the fresh ingredients: meat, vegetables, fruits, and other basic ingredients that you'd buy if you wanted to cook very healthy for yourself, if you wanted to stay in good shape, if you wanted to take care of your body. He even had his employees act differently in the different areas of the store. In the front part, they would be friendly and even greet customers by their names and go out of their way to help shoppers. In the back, where they kept all the camouflaged processed death, the employees would shoot angry stares at any shoppers who accidentally wandered into the cancer section of the supermarket. He even hired a research company and did a study. There was a strong correlation between proximity to any of his supermarkets and high levels of health and sexual vigor. Funny thing is, one of his previous students wondered how that professor could get away with talking gibberish and handing out easy A's. So they hired a research company to track every student of his compared to every other student at that particular university. And he found a high correlation between people who listened to this gibberish and financial, romantic, sexual, and emotional health. So it appeared that this old weird guy had a method to his madness after all. He ended up playing in many different large markets, and he would always put in various subliminal messages in all the music he played, and he would record the impact of these messages on his listeners. They were almost always positive: lower crime, higher health, better relationships, a much lower divorce rate, and a much higher attendance of any religious establishments. At the library, he wrote the answer to the essay question. Then he went back to class, told the professor he'd handed in the wrong blue book. He explained that he'd brought 2 blue books just in case, but finished the exam really quickly. So he decided to use the leftover time to write a letter to his sister. Of course, since this story ended up in an interview of a professor who wrote a book about cheating attempts that didn't work, it didn't work. The professor said he'd watched him the entire time and he'd only written in 1 blue book.